Today we're working on Chapter 11, Section 2, which is the Pythagorean Theorem. So our first problem here says find the length of the missing side. So you could tell we have a right triangle. The length of this side is 6. The length of this side is 8. And remember, to figure out a missing side of a right triangle, you use the Pythagorean theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now we have to figure out what number am I plugging in for a, for b, for c. So first I have to identify which side is the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is the side that does not touch the right angle. So notice that this side is touching the right angle and this side is touching the right angle. So these are what we call the legs. Therefore, this side would be the hypotenuse. The legs are interchangeable. I could call this side A and this side B, or I can call this side B and this side A. It doesn't matter. So when I plug in the numbers, I just have to make sure that that C stays as a C because that is my missing side. So it'll be, I chose to do 6 for A. So 6 squared plus 8 squared equals C squared. And now we just solve it. So I'll separate the two sides of my equation. And then the exponents would be first. So 6 squared is 36 and 8 squared is 64. Now I just add these together. 36 plus 64 is 100. And I have 100 equals c squared. C is still not by itself because the squared is still with it. Now remember, what is the opposite of squaring a number? Square rooting a number. So because I need to take the square root of c squared, because when I take the square root of this, the square root cancels out with the squared. Whatever I do on the right side, I've got to do on the left. So I'm also going to take the square root of 100. So the square root of 100 is 10. And the square root of c squared is simply c. Now that c is by itself, I know that my answer is 10, and I want to make sure I put the units with it, so it's 10 centimeters. One more example here. Again, find the length of the missing side, so let's identify our hypotenuse. I can see that this side is touching the right angle, so that's a leg, and this side is touching the right angle, so that's a leg. That means that this side is the hypotenuse, which is side C. Remember, I could call this A and this B, or this B and this A. It doesn't matter. But I have to make sure that when I plug it in, one of the legs is what's going to be missing. I have to make sure that I plug in 13 in place of C. So it'll look something like this with our formula a squared plus b squared equals c squared. I plugged in 5 for A, so 5 squared, and I plugged in 13 for C. I left the b squared because one of the legs is missing. So 5 squared plus b squared equals 13 squared. And again, we need to solve it, so I'll separate the two sides of my equation. I'll figure out the squares. So 5 squared is 25, and 13 squared is 169. So I have 25 plus b squared equals 169. Now, because the 25 and the 169 are on different sides of the equal sign, I need to get them to the same side. Since this is where the b squared is, I want to move the 25. And since it's positive 25, I'll move it by subtracting 25 from both sides. And that way the 25's cancel. I bring down the b squared. 169 minus 25 is 144. I still do not have b by itself. I still have the squared with it, so the opposite of that would be the square root. And I need to do it on both sides, so then the square root of b squared is b, and the square root of 144 is 12. So my final answer would be 12 inches. That's all on the Pythagorean theorem. Bye-bye.